and welcome to the world according to Jackie Simmons. Where in the world are you today? We are in the world of Dee Bowden today. So in just a second, you're going to get a chance to get to know, like, and trust my friend Dee, because we're going to talk about the one thing that you want to talk about and most people don't, which is where's the money? You know, they had that whole commercial thing of where's the beef back in the day. Now it's all about where's the money. So if you're a small business owner, listen up, because Dee's got a sweet spot for your revenue. Here we go. All right, Dee, come on and bring yourself up and open up your microphone. How are you?
Good evening, everybody. As I like to say, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever this is this fabulous podcast around the world. I am Dee Bowden. Jackie, thank you so much for having me on the show tonight. I can't wait to get into the conversation about where's your money, as I like to say, collect the cash, and let's get into all things small business. So first of all, thank you so much for this. Love the blue on you. I love the fact that we're color coordinated tonight. We're looking fabulous in this blue. We're about to have some fun. And let's go. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. So the first step is bring us a little bit more into the world according to Dee Bowden. We know, Dee Bowden, that you are all about collecting the cash, but how did you get into this whole money puzzle?
That's a great question. So if it's okay with you, I usually tell a story. So I'm gonna tell a story. That's how we get the party started. So about 15 years ago, I used to work for a small IT firm outside of Boston, where I'm from. They had $8 million worth of sales on the books, but not in the bank. I know, it's like, what? Seriously, $8 million worth of sales. So they were an IT firm. So they sold computers, software licenses, all things IT. I was hired as a part-time collector. I worked Monday through Friday from like 4 to 8. So the collections manager says, hey, Dee, welcome aboard. I'm like, oh, great. So they give me my list of accounts, and I'm like, y'all have $8 million in AR? It's outstanding? I thought it was a joke. They're like, no, it's not, no joke. So I haven't been a believer. So I said a short prayer, kind of went like this. Hey, God, yes, Dee, I need some help. I need some wisdom here, because I don't know what to do with $8 million. I don't know how you do that. And he was like, okay, let me give you, drop a couple of nuggets on you. I got quiet. And then this is how I got into this, because I realized that collections is two things. It's problem solving, number one, and it's an extension of customer service. And it's also this. Most people, when they hear collections, they cringe because they think of the IRS, medical bills, credit cards, car repossessions. That's not this kind of party, because there's two kinds of collections. There's consumer collections, which I just described, and then there's commercial or business collections, which is what I'm in. I'm in the business to business, business to corporation, business to government lane. So two types. There's consumer and then there's commercial. I'm on the commercial side. I'm not calling to harass you. I'm not trying to take anything away from you. I'm actually trying to get money to you. So back to the story. I get hired Monday through Friday, part-time collector, $8 million worth of sales on the books, not in the bank. I say my prayer, I get to work, and that's when I discovered that $8 million was a huge money puzzle. I'm like, because how do you do that much money in sales and not follow it all the way through to make sure the money's in the bank? So I'm like, okay, get to work, get on the phone, build relationships, get to really untangle what I see as our problem. So basically, I collect $6 million in 60 days while working part-time. Now, most people are like, whoa, that's a lot of money. It is. But here's where the story gets really interesting. So on October 24th or 5th, I always get the dates mixed up. But anyway, the CEO of the small company, we're talking, when I say small, but to small business owners, we're talking less than 100 people. We all come downstairs and he says, listen, we need to have a chat. Now, I kind of say at this point, if you have a boo or a boo-at, when he or she says to you, listen, we need to talk to you, like, I don't want to talk to you today. I don't want to hear this. You're like, oh, man. So we get downstairs and we're like, all of us looking around each other going, what's going on? Because, we just collected all this money. So we're thinking we're getting a bonus. He's like, nope. He says, listen, we've made an executive decision and we are closing the company. And you've got 30 minutes to go get your stuff and leave the building. This is 2 months before Christmas. Now, after I picked myself off the floor, I'm like, how did that happen? And that's kind of how I got into this, because I realized, number one, there were a lot more factors I will never know, because I was only a part-time collector. But as a business owner now, I'm looking at, how did you have that much money on the books, but it wasn't in the bank? How was it that you had that many sales that went through the process? You ordered computers and software licenses and all these things. You had contracts and order entry, and you billed, but you neglected the last lane, which is my lane, collections. How do you not collect that much money? How do you let that much money sit uncollected, how do you not ask the questions about how come we haven't gotten paid? And so I talk about, as Jackie so eloquently said, I solved the money puzzle for small businesses. I began to see collections as problem solving, and I saw a puzzle and I'm like, okay, there were these departments that didn't talk. So sales did their thing and collections did their thing, but never the two met. I was like, oh, that's part of the problem, because you don't talk. And then because if you don't talk, if the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, you never know. So of course you're doing your sale, you're thinking, oh, we're great. But you don't follow it all the way through to make sure that the sale is complete and the money's in the bank. So that's how I got into this. And then I realized that, number one, I love to solve problems. It's always been like that. As far back as I can remember, I've always been focused on solving problems. And, you know, most people say, you used to get in trouble as a little kid. You ask so many questions. Well, that's how you solve problems. If you think about it, everything that we have in life is because somebody thought about it and they asked some questions because they were trying to solve a problem, and then they created something brilliant. How do you think we got here today? Everything we're enjoying, we're sitting here streaming live around the world, but somebody had to figure out how to create the internet. Somebody had to figure out how to create Zoom. Somebody had to figure out how to create Facebook. Somebody had to figure out the cameras, the lights, the microphone, and then to put us together to have this conversation. It's all about problem solving. And so what I used to get in trouble for as a little kid, now I don't get in trouble for anymore, because now I ask great questions, and then I bring you back good results in terms of collecting money.
All right. Now, I'm going to have you slow down and say that last sentence again so that I can hear it, because my ears are older than your mouth, apparently. I am not able to hear as fast as you're able to talk. What did you just say, that last sentence?
I said that what I used to get in trouble for when asking all the questions, I said I don't get in trouble for anymore, because now I'm solving problems and collecting the cash.
It's all about the cash. Anyone who thinks money is not important has not tried to live without it. It's just like someone who says air is not important. That's because they haven't tried to live without it. It becomes increasingly important the less there is of it.
Right.
And sometimes, if you're really smart, it becomes increasingly important the more there is of it. And in the case of your case study, boy, what a way to get started. Yeah. So what was your next gig? I mean, from that first gig, I would think you might have had some emotional resistance to staying in collections.
Oh, definitely. Because after I picked myself off the floor and I'm like, what am I going to do? This is 2 months before Christmas. So like anybody else who's ever had a job and then lost it, my first nerves are like, oh crap, or some other choice words. How am I going to pay my bills? I mean, let's just keep it 100. I'm like, okay, so I figured out that, number one, although my job was a part-time collector, I realized that there are always companies that need more collection. So I basically had to recoup from this loss and then get back and decide to do it again. So my next gig was actually working for a wireless communications company, and so I got hired again to do the same thing on larger accounts and more money, etc. And then I realized that there are always going to be companies that need help or need assistance with recovering money. But I decided that I wanted to not just do this, as a profession, but I also wanted to create a business to talk to and teach small and medium-sized companies why collecting the cash is so important. And I discovered that, number one, collections for a lot of people, it's one of those things you're like, you get like this. You kind of almost not quite the heebie-jeebies, but you get like, I don't want to do this. It's like, no, don't make me do this. And I'm like, I got it. But here's the thing. If you're in business, if you have customers, let me start this way. If you have customers, you had to do a sales presentation for them to hire you. You know what? It's probably better if I use this. I think, Jackie, you and I talked about this. We talked about the cell phone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the cell phone. So anybody who's listening under the sound of my voice, unless you're under a rock, you got a cell phone, whether you're team Android, team iPhone. Somebody sold you a phone. You said yes, and you have the phone. How do I know that? Because you walked out of the store or it got shipped to your house. That's number one. Number two, you have a contract with the cell phone company. How do I know this? Because you get a bill from them every single month that outlines your phone, your terms and conditions, the length of service, whatever gigs you have. And then if you bought the phone outright, or if like most of us, old school, you're still paying, making payments, doesn't matter. You still have a phone. You got a bill. Then order entry happened, because when you went to pay for the phone, you went up to the register and they swiped your credit card or debit card, and you wait for these two magical words that say transaction approved. You're kind of going like this for a little bit because money might be a little short. You're like, man, I pray this goes through real quick because I need this phone. So you do that. So you have a sale, you have a contract, you have an order entry, you have the invoice. The company invoices you, they'll bill you every single month. How do I know that? Because you would not still have this phone if you didn't get billed. And then my lane collections, you pay it. Or as Jackie knows, I say at the end of all of that, they got this magic button that says services temporarily disconnected if you don't pay your invoices. And that's why I am in business, is to make sure that you don't have your services disconnected because you didn't collect the cash for the products or the services that you've already provided. And in good faith, you should have gotten paid for, but because you're not real comfortable with asking for the money, you're like, I don't want to mess with the relationship. But if you don't get the money, you're not going to have a relationship and you're not going to have business either.
All right, beautiful analogy. I'm going to break this down, spin it around, and bring it into my language and say, wouldn't it be nice as a small business owner to have a button that says services temporarily suspended when people don't pay their bills?
Yep.
Yeah. And most people, let's face it, the vast majority of people pay for the services and the products that they buy, that they contract for. The very large proportion do. And it is this small number who don't that can create a tangled nightmare for a small business owner. How do you handle that? I mean, back in the day, and for me, back in the day was working with buy here, pay here, used car sales. Yeah. The old school car dealers said the fastest way to get back on your feet, miss your second car payment. Because they had the button. I mean, they emotionally had no attachment to the people they sold to, and they just went and picked up people's cars. They got them back on their feet, literally, after they missed the second car payment.
Yep.
Now, the new school, which started coming in a little over a decade ago, is that you renegotiate the loan. You work with someone to make it possible for them to continue to have the vehicle, and you just rework the paper. Now, for some small businesses, that is a problem because their cash flow doesn't have enough margin in it to be delayed.
Right.
So what can someone do as a small business owner to be able to either install the magic button or to prevent needing the magic button? Take us down that path so that we can help some people keep their profits.
Well, number one, I recommend this. If you have first of all, if you have a contract for product or services, I'll give a simple example. I ordered 10 sneakers from you. You only gave me 8. I'm not paying you for 10 sneakers. I only have 8. You still owe me 2 sneakers. So I need you to fulfill my order and get me my 2 sneakers so I'm whole. I ordered 10. I only have 8. I need my 2. That's number one. You have to look at your contract and make sure that you have fulfilled everything that's in your contract. Number 2, old school relationships. It's funny. People are like, that seems so odd. But here's the thing. Business is all about relationships. There are times when, if you're a small business, if you have provided excellent, what I believe is provided excellent service, there is nothing wrong with getting on the phone and calling your customer and asking to speak to the accounts payable person and say, listen, I need to find out the state of my invoices and find out what's going on in terms of payment. They may tell you, listen, this happens. They may tell you, I cannot pay you the full $10,000 for your invoice this month because I'm waiting on a payment from somebody else. But what you can do is you can say, okay, I understand that. Can we negotiate, or can you do a partial payment for half or a quarter of this, and let's document this, on the invoices and an email to say, all right, you owe me 10,000, you can't pay me 10, but you can pay me 5, which means you can still owe me 5. We're gonna modify the contract so that and it's documented that we both agree you owe me 10, you're gonna pay me 5, you still owe me 5, and it's documented so that, number one, you don't ruin that relationship, because I'm of the belief that some money is better than no money. And there's no sense in you're messing up the entire relationship, because if you're able to work with the customer, especially right now in the midst of COVID, if you can work with them while they're figuring out their cash flow, you can plan on having repeat business, all based on how you handle it now. Because here's the thing, at the end of the day, you're doing business with another person. Yes, I know it's the name of your company, whatever, but it's one person to another. And the courtesy, the kindness, and what I consider old school respect that you show helps them. Because here's the thing, they didn't plan to not pay you. They didn't expect to be stuck and not being able to make their payments either. But working with them, it's no different than when you call it. Okay, let's take it on the personal side. Let's say you have a credit card that's due. Most of us have had one or many, and you've had to. The credit card company is constantly calling you. Hey D, you owe me for this payment. What can you do? They have something that's called, can you make the minimum payment? Why? Because they don't want to lose the relationship with you. They're willing to work with you to make the adjustment, because they know that if they grant you grace right now while you are working through your challenges, you will eventually, unless things get catastrophic, you will eventually catch up your payments and get yourself back in good standing. Well, it's the same thing in business. This is my personal belief. Everybody may be like, that's not true. Well, it's my story. It's what I see, and it's what I know to be true. I know that if you extend grace, and if you are willing to work with small businesses to do partial payments, it's no different than old school. Jackie, you and I grew up with layaway. I know I did. We didn't always have the money to make all the payments. That's why you could go put something on layaway for $5. You get started, and they trusted you to come in every week or every 2 weeks, whenever you got paid, to make your payments. Guess what? Because the relationship was important. People didn't, the stores didn't want you to renege on your layaway, because guess what? All that extra product was left over. They're like, oh man, now I gotta put this back on the shelf. Versus me working with you so you can continue making payments, so that you can eventually walk out the store with your product. Well, in the same way in business, I truly believe that if you learn how to do this, and I understand we're talking generally speaking, but you won't know whether this is an option or not unless you ask for it, number one, and then it all depends on the relationship you have with your customer. But I believe that if you demonstrate this, you can get some money, and you won't necessarily be stuck. That's what I think.
All right, and that works on both sides of the coin. Because when we're talking about accounts receivable, the other side of that coin is accounts payable.
Yep.
And a business that has accounts payable that picks up the phone and reaches out to their supplier and says in advance, I'm cash flow challenged this month, can we work something out? Mm-hmm. Saves everybody time, talent, treasure, the whole 9 yards. It all works better. The first person who notices that there's a challenge, if that person picks up the phone, we prevent things from piling up and backing up.
Exactly.
And it sounds like you walked into a real pile of something with your first job. Yeah.
I did. And it is true, because it's one of those things that a lot of people, when people hear the story about collection, they're like impressed. Oh my gosh, you did $8 million. But it wasn't always like that. There were times when I was first getting started in this whole collection space where it was like, nobody wanted to talk to me. They're like, stop calling me about these accounts. Like, okay, so my self-esteem was going, you hired me to collect this money, but I'm having some challenges. But it was not until I realized that some of the customers that I was calling, they were having challenges. And that's when I learned, okay, how do I work with you to help solve this problem? And then show, courtesy and empathy and respect, and then key point was to document what we discussed via email and say, okay, we're on this date, we talked about this invoice, it was for this amount of money, you can't make the full payment, you can't make this payment, and then we're going to follow up. And when I learned that, and then when I did the follow-up, and they're like, oh, you worked with us. Yeah, because the relationship was important. And I've been in collections, and I've been an administrative person all of my career and all of my life in general. So a lot of people look at admin, it's like, man, that's not really that important. But when you're in business and you need the administrative person to go research your problem and help you cut your check, you'll learn to have more respect for them, because that person can help you get paid. And it's a very important piece. And I think a lot of people forget that, because they're like, oh, they're not the salesperson. Well, I deal with companies and corporations, and I know for a fact that the admin person is super important, and how you treat them depends on how soon your check gets cut.
All right. Salespeople learn this, because they don't call them admin people. They call them gatekeepers. These are the people who can open or close a gate for a sales conversation.
Hmm.
So when it comes to the administrative side, to the executive side, my favorite sign is the one that says, do you want to talk to the boss or the person who knows what's going on?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if you
Exactly.
want to get things done, rarely is that the boss. It's not the big picture person that gets things done. It's the big picture person that motivates and creates a vision to get the company moving. But they're not the ones doing the worker bee stuff most of the time, at least not at the level of six figures, seven figures. And when you're getting up into multiple seven figures, if you want to get something done, the person who answers the phone is your best friend
Hmm.
because they know who can get it done and who's just going to take your time.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So important relationship piece. All
Absolutely.
right. So you have branched out from collecting for other people and you collect for some names that, people might recognize. Yeah. So you branched out and gone entrepreneurial.
I have.
Yeah. So tell us what made you choose an entrepreneurial path? Because let's face it, there is enough money that needs to be collected in big business that you did not have to choose an entrepreneurial path.
Well, you know what, Jackie, what made me decide to choose it is this. It's the story I told at the beginning of the show. I worked for a small company. I worked for a small business, and I realized that, when as you go through life, you kind of I think you have what I call the epiphanies, and you're like, okay, I go to work for somebody, I'm building somebody else's dream, or you're a dualpreneur, which a lot of people are, which means you still have a day job and you build a business, which is me, and I also realized this: I want to make a difference, but I also want to make a dollar. And I learned that lesson from watching myself and 100 people's lives be turned upside down 2 months before Christmas. We're in COVID, we're in the midst throes of COVID-19, whatever, COVID-19 coronavirus 2020. I can't, I don't even have the words to talk to all of the small businesses that I know that are impacted. It's like I wish I could do like a massive mastermind of some sort to say, listen, bring your AR, let's talk about this and let's come up with a strategy on what you need to do so you can get some cash flow in, because I don't want to see small businesses lose because of this. I don't, I mean, it pains me to know that there are some small businesses, number one, that already have cash on the books, but it's not in the bank because they were like, oh, I'll collect it later. Well, now you can't collect it, or you may not be able to collect it because you're expecting that company to be there. They may be filing for bankruptcy. They might not be there. And unfortunately, because people have this lazy attitude about collections, I'll get to it. It's like, no, no. If the coronavirus didn't teach us anything, it should have taught you that, number one, when you provide your product or service, you need to invoice immediately, and you need to be on the phone building that relationship to make sure you're getting paid as quickly as possible and solving whatever problems, if there are any, that are coming up to delay your payments. Because right now there's companies that are scrambling because they're like, oh, that problem, yeah, they brought it to my attention 2 months ago, but I was like, I'll get to it. Well, now you just can't rock up to the office and go talk to somebody because most people are remote now. And
Yep.
now that they're remote, that's a different lifestyle because you can't just roll up and ask them, can I talk to you for 5 minutes? Nope. I got to get on. I got to schedule a Zoom call. I got to find what time of the day or night. If you're international, it's like, what is it? It's 8 o'clock here. It's 2 o'clock in the morning someplace else. I don't know about you, but I might be sleepy. I might not be fully coherent to talk to you at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's like, no, I'm not doing that. But the point is that our world and how we do business has changed. And if you're a small business, what I hope you're taking away from this lesson is this: your cash flow matters. Number one, collections is definitely two things. It's problem solving and it's an extension of customer service. Number three, if you have outstanding invoices that are over 30 days, 60 days, 90 days past due, you have to get on the phone. If you don't have somebody that does that, then whoever works with you, you need to empower them to get on the phone and start making those calls to find out what's the state of those accounts so you can figure out what potential cash flow can come in for this. Now we're at the end of July. So you're looking hopefully to get cash flow for August and September. We're at, in less than 2 months, we'll be at the end of the third quarter of 2020.
I know. We passed the halfway mark really, really quickly.
Yeah.
And so your sound has gotten a little bit quieter. And so you may have to just slow down a little bit so that we can catch every word that you said.
Okay.
But the reality of what you're talking about is, when I'm going to reveal my age here just by saying that I understand trickle-down economics, because that's the methodology that was used to explain the changes that were coming to our economy in this country several decades ago. Now what we're dealing with is a trickle. It isn't going up, it isn't going down, it's just barely going. And so the person who can manage their cash flow the best is going to be the one who comes out of the COVID cocoon more like a butterfly.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and so this is and it's interesting because I love to read. And today I was reading out of one of the, I guess it's a classic now. It's called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker.
Yes. Great book. Yes.
Great book. And the value of understanding how to manage money in good times, that then you have the habit when times are tight, is one of those things you were just talking about. The lack of that is causing crisis where crisis might have been, we don't know, could have been, but might have been preventable. And so to start managing it now is what you're inviting people to do. It's not about, oh, I didn't do it right, oh, woe is me. It is just about, look at where you are.
Right.
So what's the first place that they can look other than pick up your phone and make a phone call to somebody and make a friend? That's really what I'm hearing you say.
So can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect. Okay. So first thing you can do is, okay, I'm old school. So like Jackie, I'm gonna go old school, but hopefully this will make sense. If you work for a company or a corporation, they have something what's called an aging report, which basically is a list of all of your accounts. So I'm going to teach you old school, same way you can do it for the small business owner. You should have, if you don't have it, you can set this up tonight. It's easy. Excel, column number 1, the name of your customer, whoever your customer is. Column number 2, if you have a contract number or an agreement number, what's the contract number or agreement number? Put in column number 2. Column number 3, what's the value? How much is the contract for?
So is that the outstanding value or the total value?
Total value of the contract, whatever it's worth. So column number 1 is the name of your customer. Column number 2, if they have a contract or purchase order number, what is that? Column number 3, what's the total amount of the contract? How much the total amount of the contract is worth? $100,000, whatever it is. That's in 3. 4, what did they buy from you? Why do you care? Well, because you need to know this. So, because if you had 10 sneakers and you only sold them, only delivered 8, you still owe them 2. What did they buy from you? If they bought 10 sneakers, you say 10 sneakers at whatever it costs. Column number 6, when are you supposed to deliver that to them? When is it due? Column number 7, when did you invoice them? And then column number 8, when were you supposed to get paid? And if you have a salesperson, column number 9 would be his or her name at the end of that long row. But here's the thing, whether you do this Excel, you do it on a whiteboard, you do the Post-it note, the big Post-it sheets, or as I say with the kids, if you have a phone, there probably is an app that can do this as well. It doesn't matter. The point is to lay it out so you can know what's the state of your accounts. Because before you get on the phone and you start making these calls, you need to know, okay, well, did I deliver everything according to all of my customers, whether it's one customer or many, did you deliver everything to them? And if you owe them things, then before you start asking them for all the money, go fix what's owed. So that when you make the call, you can get your past money and your current money, and you address it prayerfully in one call. But you need to always know what's going on with your accounts. In business, they talk about, they call it an aging report, and it basically tells you accounts that are currently due, 0 to 30, 31 to 60, 61 to 90, and beyond. My swim lane has been 60 and beyond. That's where the collecting all those old accounts, that's been where I have excelled. But if you're a small business, you may not have 60 days past due. Okay, that's great.
Good.
It's great. And I listen, if you don't have 60 days past due, yeah, let's clap it up.
I was going to say, we could celebrate this. All right.
Yes. Yeah,
Because you don't have to fix a problem that you don't have.
exactly.
Just look at what you're doing that's working well and do more of that. You're good. But when you have something that's 60 days, 90 days, you know, anything that's out off the spreadsheet,
Yeah.
is often out of mind because it's uncomfortable to find out what's true for other people. And so I know that it's uncomfortable. It's how I ended up having to create a program for people to become better advocates for themselves, is because it's uncomfortable to speak up.
Yeah.
And so they have three choices. There's always three. You might come up with four. What are the 3 or 4 choices that someone has if they've got accounts receivable on the books that are 60 days or more old? Now, we kind of gave them the first one, which is you could personally fill out your spreadsheet, make sure you've delivered what you said you were going to deliver, and pick up the phone and call. So that would be step 1. What's another thing they could do?
Number 2, double check to make sure that you haven't already been paid and you just missed it.
Ooh. All right, so before you pick up the phone, double check.
Yeah, yeah. Because now some people might say, well, as a small business owner, I would always know whether I got paid or not. That's true. But we are humans and we make mistakes. And that's why if you have everything laid out and you check it when it comes in, you'll know. And if by chance the payment has come in and you forgot to credit it or debit, credit it to your account, you need to know that so that you don't get on the phone and then you have the customer say, well, I already paid you. Then you're like, ooh, I got egg on my face, because then you're like, you don't know what's going on with your money.
So let's get clear. One of the ways that you can find out whether you have any payments that are not correctly attributed to the customer who gave the money to you would be to do something really, and you've been using this word old school, and I'm going to tease you about it because of the number of times you've said it, but I'm going to use it here and say people could do something that I don't even know that they teach anymore. It's called balance your checkbook.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about a skill set that's a life skill, whether you're at home or in corporate. Balance your checkbook, manage your money, notice where it is and where it belongs and if it's there or not. It's sort of like that old thing they used to say, it's 9 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? You know where your money is.
Exactly.
And yeah, it's really just that simple. All right. So double check everything, pick up the phone and call.
Yes.
Now I'm going to say, the third thing, and you haven't said it, but it is as obvious to me as an elephant in the room, outsource it. Get someone who can pay attention consistently, because if you're a small business owner, your attention is, how can we say, divided. That's a polite way of saying scattered.
Yeah. Absolutely. And yes, and so yes, if you're a small business and if you're at to the point where you have the 4 or 5 different departments and collections, the back office is just not your thing. Yeah, like Jackie said, outsource it. But but here's the thing, even if you outsource it, you still need to know what's going on. You should have your person or persons should be submitting a report to you so you can still see the layout of the land, so you know what's happening across those buckets. And here's the other thing, I'll say this, if you call your customer and they say, you know what, for some odd reason, we didn't get the invoice. Really simple. Resubmit it and put an R at the end for revised, or an A or just something to distinguish it so they know it's not the original invoice. You need to let them know there's a duplicate. You can even you could stamp it duplicate and then scan it to them. But the point is that if in the midst of this electronic world, the invoice didn't come in, it got sent to the wrong department. We used to joke all the time saying the dog, cat, or squirrel ate it. I don't know, don't really care. But the point is that something happened. It happens. You have people that do data entry all day. My career started off with doing data entry. So we used to call it these fat finger mistakes. Do you know what it takes if you don't fix a data entry error on the front end, when you're going through and you've got a large contract or a small contract, if you don't fix it on the front end, it becomes an administrative nightmare on the back end.
Oh yeah, we have a name for that. It's called GIGO, garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. Well, and that's another part of tracking everything, because yes, you're like, oh, that's so tedious. Well, here's the thing. it wasn't tedious for you to do the sales proposal. It wasn't tedious for you to do the sales presentation. It wasn't tedious for you to do the presentations. You actually get the contract so you can provide the service or the product. So the tedious parts that you say are tedious, it's not tedious. It's part of business. These are all the parts we're talking about. The lane I talk about happens to be with cash, happens to be with collections, because I know that the sale is not complete until the money's in the bank, and all the pieces that make up the sale include the sale, the contract, the order, delivery.
All right. So we're going to make it easy on them. You've got a gift for them, and I want you to tell them, let's unwrap their present, because they need the help. When they need a gift, we got to give them something happy here, because you've laid out a process that if people knew in advance, they would, if we know better, we do better. So what do you got to help them know better and do better?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Jackie, for that. Okay, so my free gift is an ebook. It's actually called Collect the Cash. It's 5 steps to collect your money. It's basically a simple book, a simple ebook. It lays out what you need to do. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. You can get it at www.collectthecash.biz. That's www.collectthecash.biz. There's a link for the free ebook. It's called Collect the Cash. It's a free ebook.
All right, so we have a little wonky signal. So I'm just going to say, everybody, you can look in the show notes, look in the description. The link is going to be there for you. So just in case you couldn't translate that with, every now and then we get these wonky things that come through. So Don't worry, it's in the show notes. We got you covered. Now, you said something earlier that I'm going to just bring up, because you said you wanted something. And anytime somebody says they want something, my ears pick up. You said you want to have a mastermind. You want to just bring all these small businesses together. Tell them, bring your accounts receivable. Let's solve puzzles together. So you're thinking about doing a mastermind. And I'm just going to invite people, when you've got the ebook and you're going through it, if a mastermind is on your mind, then let Dee know so that she knows there's enough interest to actually take the time to pull something like that together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because you'll be hearing more from her. I mean, this is The World According to Dee Bowden tonight, and you're listening to The World According to Jackie Simmons. And from this point on, you can find us on Facebook, you can find us on the YouTube, and you can subscribe to that channel and get more of these kinds of business tips. There's just a sweet spot for where the cash flow matters more. And it's in the hallmark of the bedrock of our country, which is small business. So Dee, I just want to say thank you for taking and turning your attention to small business, helping them with the decisions about their business that actually make a difference. And so wonderful that your camera decided to come back. I appreciate that. I was worried there for a second. All right. So Dee, again, thank you for inviting us into your world.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Story. And I'm going to hold you here for 1 minute, because I said I'm going to ask you what was the best thing that ever happened to you today. So tell us, what was the best thing that happened to you today?
Well, I had 2 best things that happened to me today. Number 1, being a guest on your show. So first of all, seriously, thank you so much for that, because that was actually awesome. Love the blue, love the energy, love being able to talk about this and get this out to the world. That was the number 1 best thing that happened. Number 2, I actually graduated today from a program actually called Power at the Podium, who's hosted by Quinn Conyers. And so it was on a platform called Speak Black Women. And
Power at the Podium.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's by who?
It was Power at the Podium by Quinn Conyers. And we had nine of us gave our debut signature talk.
Woohoo!
Yes, woohoo! Where's my little clapper? Wait a minute, let me do it this way.
Oh. From one speaker to another. That is such a major accomplishment, Dee.
Thank you.
It just really, really is. What is the title of your signature talk?
It was
debuted.
Today, Collect the Cash.
Oh, gee. Yeah, you're good. All right. It's good when your hobby is the same as your livelihood. As far as I'm concerned, that's the way life is supposed to work.
Absolutely.
All right. For everyone, thank you for watching. For Dee, thank you for your time and
Absolutely.
for your expertise and for your gift for everyone that they can go and collect the cash with a checklist and a little more help with that ebook. And until the next time, thank you all for being part of the world according to Jackie. Make it a great day in your world. Remember, the choice is yours.